Hello, and welcome to The Confident Commit, the podcast for anyone who wants to join the conversation on how to deliver software better and faster.
If you're looking to build a trusted ship, tune in, let's confidently commit.
I'm your host, Rob Zuber, CTO of CircleCI, industry leader in all things CI/CD and all things delivering software better and faster. Today, I'm joined by Meg Adams, Senior Director of Engineering at the New York Times. I just love saying, before I even say welcome, which I will do in 1 second, every morning riding BART, I see so many people just on their phones, doing, honestly, it's the games. I think it's but at least I'm really excited that they're doing intellectual games. But the New York Times is everywhere. And so super excited to have you. I think that it's something people can definitely relate to. And I'm excited to hear about, something that is so established and has been around for so long in a world that's changing so quickly. So Meg, thank you so much for joining.
I am so happy to be here. Thank you so much, Rob. And honestly, you captured it perfectly. I go into work every day being like, holy smokes, I work at the New York Times. That's crazy.
Yeah.
It's an amazing job, and I'm so happy to be there.
It's so awesome. I think it's such a interesting test that occurs to many of us in our lives where, our friends, our parents, pick kind of an audience are like, so what do you do? And I will say, when I hang out with my friends who are in software, I work at CircleCI, continuous integration, continuous delivery. People are like, cool, yeah. But the rest of the audiences that are not in software, I just say, I'm in software kind of thing, right? But New York Times, pretty much you can walk up to anyone on the street, particularly, and you're in the New York area, right? So I think even more so. Yeah. Awesome. Well, let's jump right into it. I mean, I sort of threw it out there to start. The world is changing very rapidly, and certainly in software engineering, which we'll get to in a little bit, AI is having a massive impact on how we think about what we do, how we do what we do. A lot of questions, not a ton of answers. But I think even earlier, before we all realized the possibilities there, it was about content, right? I can ask any question and get a generated answer. And so I'm curious, I think you have that extra layer that the business dynamic is sort of fundamentally changing in terms of what the New York Times does. I'm curious, how is that, I guess, how is that impacting the way that you think about what you deliver, the way that you think about, your product every day, beyond just the coding piece?
Is AI changing things? I didn't notice.
That's just a reason to take a sip of tea.
I
will take the bait. Yeah, no, I think one or two things have been adjusted. It depends on how you view the world, but yeah.
Yeah. I think, what I'll say is what's unique and so special about working at the Times is that our North Star is always the journalism. The business side and the product are essential. They keep us sustainable and growing. Those people on BART playing our games, but those things exist in service of the mission, which is to seek the truth and help people understand the world. So our success is when quality reporting reaches the right audience and it shapes their understanding, whether that shows up as millions of subscribers or a single story that changes policy in some way. So AI exists in that same space for us. How can we use AI to expand the ways we can deliver on our mission? And I would say we aren't looking to be first adopters and are taking a pretty focused but measured approach to adopting AI across the business.
Yeah.
So in my corner of the world, specifically as engineering leader for our cooking product, I'm thinking about a few different things. First, what are the no-brainer applications of AI that we can implement in the product? Earlier in the year, the team launched metrics conversion for our recipes, which some of our users had been asking for and absolutely loved when we got it launched. And we're thinking a lot about improving search within the product going into 2026. And second, I'm paying attention to which Gen AI tools for developers are meeting or exceeding our expectations for code generation and figuring out how to influence broad adoption of those tools, which I know is something we're all thinking about. And
Hmm.
then finally, I'm thinking a lot about how AI tooling can plug and play effectively together to positively impact the full product development lifecycle. I'm like super interested right now in the integration points between tools and how to decrease friction in things we do all the time, like handoffs between designers and developers. So I'll say honestly that AI hasn't revolutionized the way our team works yet, but
Hmm.
we're all actively engaged in experimentation and learning, much like so many other companies. And I feel like really confident that we're on a path to real breakthroughs in how work gets done.
Wow, that's a high bar. So I'm super.
Mm,
There's so many things in that answer that I'm interested in. I would have to try to remember them all, but I'm going to start with the high bar of exceeding expectations. Like,
yeah.
I I think at the moment, I'm going to go out on a limb here, and this won't even get published for a few weeks, which means the conversation will have totally changed yet again. But there are not a lot of tools that are exceeding expectations. There's a
Mhm.
lot of, and if you have a list, I'd love to hear what they are. But there's a lot of, I can get this to work if I do this, or it will get me this far, and then I'll do this. Like, it's imperfect, but I want to know how it works, and I want to be on this train, because when it exceeds expectations, I don't want to come from a cold start at that point. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I'm curious how you think about the kind of experimentation side versus, now everybody has to use this. Like, how do you kind of be aware without the, mandate, even though this is going to make your life harder or whatever? I need you to do it right now.
Yeah, how I've been thinking about it with my engineers, and the framing I've kind of set for them and for myself is that I want everyone to have an opinion.
Hmm.
I don't want to create the team
Mm.
where people didn't use it and then in 1 2 years someone decides to switch jobs, they decide to go do something else, but they were working on Meg's team at the New York Times and they didn't have to experiment with AI, they didn't have to form
Mm.
an opinion, and then they're not valuable in the marketplace.
Hmm.
I take my responsibility to the people who work with me very seriously. And because of that, I want everyone playing with tools and seeing what works and what doesn't. And forming those opinions of right now, what I can say is X works in this way and it's valuable to my work in X way, and it's not valuable to my work in Y way. I'm thinking a lot about quality, how AI can influence the quality of something. How can we execute a task or work on a project in the same amount of time we might have in a different era, but do it at 10% higher quality than we did before? Um, so I'm very much like, I want everyone on the train,
Yeah.
learning, talking about it, and looking for outcomes. I don't. I've been able to participate in a cross-functional working group at the Times, which has been a really great opportunity. And we're focused on getting crisper around evaluating our application of AI for different use cases, and really focused on accelerating the shared brain around Gen AI by more proactively naming what we think AI is going to do for us before a task or
Mm.
project starts, comparing those assumptions to reality, and then sharing learnings out with the full organization. Um, you know, Again, we're really interested in outcomes that allow us to fulfill our mission with greater reach, greater clarity, greater impact. So it's important that we're structured and rigorous in our approach
Hmm.
and that we're all
Hmm.
learning together as quickly as possible. So I do take this as like a burden of responsibility, this point in time as a leader, to help people get on board.
Yeah. That's I love that perspective. Your folks will at some point move on,
Yeah.
and what an awkward position. I yeah, I don't. Hopefully, it wouldn't come down to specifically like it's Meg's fault, but what an awkward position to be in. And like, I sort of held my people back from participating, right? And it is like there really is this. I don't know if it's a tension, but it's definitely sort of a parallel state that exists in tech in general and has through all of our transitions, that I want to know enough about new technology to be able to apply it when it will be useful.
Mhm.
But I don't want everyone spinning up new technology every day because that will be fun, or that will, because the complexity of your system grows rapidly. Nobody really understands all the pieces people have put in place. But if you don't know about the possibilities of that tech, then you never have the opportunity to find leverage in the things that will impact you. And I really like this, the personal development piece of that. So one of the other of the many interesting things that you said in your earlier response was the sort of drive to high quality journalism. You had different words, but I'll paraphrase,
Yeah.
and sort of providing great insight and understanding to your audience, and using these other tools, cough cough Wordle, to support that, and to get to drive that, to I guess generate awareness, generate revenue to support it, whatever the mechanisms are. But it does feel like that is shifting as well right now. When I I'll say I watch, but maybe I do this as well. Like folks type something into Google and don't even get past the AI summary. Like, that's good enough. Like that basically summarizes what I was looking to know. I definitely have those moments though where I'm like, is this even accurate? Maybe I should just scroll down and click a couple links, kind of thing. So how do you, like, as the world is shifting, how do you think about sort of fitting into that? And really, it feels like this is a really long question. On one hand, gets harder because I will take the AI summary and be like, good enough. On the other hand, I think really good human connection stands out more in a world where, like, it's so easy to get the sort of AI generated content or whatever. And so maybe that's the opportunity, is to like have really great writing that people will sort of crave after enough AI summary. Anyway, sorry, that was a long question, but how do you think about that?
No, I think you stole the words right out of my mouth. I think the Times' competitive advantage is that we have a long history of seeking to tell the truth, seeking to support people in their understanding, and that reputation, and ultimately that as our mission, what drives every decision that we make. I believe personally, that will maintain the Times as a distinguished provider of information as we continue into the AI era.
Yeah, yeah. It's all. I mean, the I want to just take 1 second to call out the value of a clear mission, right? For anyone who's not reading it between the lines already, like, because one of the things I wanted to ask about, the New York Times has been around longer than the internet, right? And so, and I think has been known as a really strong technology player, right? And so it's not there are many media organizations for whom print was the be all and end all, right? Like the reason we're in this is because people pick up their print newspaper and sit with coffee in the morning. And I don't get the sense that the Times follow that, because I just saw so much amazing technology, and I've seen like really innovative things around particular events, that are delivering information in a really impactful way. I'm trying to think of some examples, but none are coming to. I'm sure you have many, and we could use yours. And so it hasn't been about, we print a newspaper and it's black and white and people receive it in this way, but it is about delivering that. And so it feels like you're well set up to make that transition. A lot of that is mission, but what else in the overall organizational leadership, has given you this place where it's like, as long as we do this, as long as we're delivering the truth, as long as we're doing great journalism, then we can pursue that in any way we want, and we should be comfortable with these changes. Like, what is it about organizational leadership that you think has set you up for that?
The Times has a long history of being family run, which affects things in some way, in that, there has never been an opportunity for that mission to slide in any way. It's been the mission the company has had for years and years and years, through so many different transitions. AI is one of many that they have navigated with clarity by having that mission. And I am someone who seeks out mission-driven companies. I love working at mission-driven companies. One of my favorite jobs I had was at Etsy for several years, and their mission is to empower small businesses. And it just really clarifies so many things when there's so many different data points you can use to make a decision as a leader. Knowing what the mission is and what the values are that support that mission, it makes things feel like you understand what the game we're playing is, and it helps guide decisions in a way that I just really I like knowing how to win a game, and a mission really helps with that.
Yeah. I think it's huge, when you can face really tough decisions, or what should be tough decisions maybe, and say, well, this is what we stand for,
Mhm.
therefore this is the way we will go about this, right?
Yeah.
Versus, I don't know, again, I'll keep using the, it's not really an analogy, but like whoever it might be in your space that would be like, but we print paper newspapers, right? Like they have to sit at the checkout at the grocery store or wherever people find their, I mean, I, I'm going to age myself, but everyone already knew, like, well, one, I delivered newspapers as a child in Toronto. What a fun job. I
Well,
don't. It's so funny because I rode around on my little BMX bicycle. Okay, we're way off topic here, but like I rode around my and I rode up to the door and I put them in the little hooks under the like. Most
mhm.
people listening to this have no idea what I'm talking about, but the little hooks under the mailbox. And now, like, we don't get a paper newspaper, but they're still delivered in my neighborhood. And someone drives up the street at 4 a.m. and throws them out their window in the general direction of the house, right? And it's like I feel like the old man yelling at clouds, like, "Come on, you got to
Come
put that in."
on.
Right. And honestly, I'm kind of thinking the people that are getting the newspapers don't want to have to walk that far.
I will say I was a
Anyway.
thrower, but I was a deep inaccurate thrower.
Mm.
It was making
Oh.
it to the porch.
Oh.
Yeah.
Wow.
hmm
No,
Is this
there
where
was
you thought this conversation was going to go?
I'll just say the standards of the Toronto Star and I don't even want to say, when I was young, extremely high.
Extremely high, Kansas City,
We
Missouri.
walked to the door, or maybe it was the standards of the citizens of my neighborhood. They were not accepting of throwing, and you had to go back and walk door to door, collect cash for the last month or whatever. Oh my goodness. Anyway, so I think we've established through this a long legacy and an ability to transition through that legacy, right? Like now, again, everyone's just looking at it on their phone, which is super cool. That's very, very different, but they're still getting the impact, right? And again, that ability to say, hey, the world's changing, but we know exactly what we want to be in this world. And that's really helpful to us. So we can make some decisions about how we want to act. So let's bring this back a little bit to engineering. Only a little bit though, because I've been thinking a lot lately about product-oriented engineers. In particular, like we're in a business where our customer is engineers, so really helpful for us to understand, how the transitions that engineering teams are going through. But I'm curious, as someone running a team that does cooking, like, do you have to know how to cook to be a product-oriented engineer on the cooking team? Like how closely does that play? Is it some of the folks? I mean, do people care? Like how does that? I mean, I've used New York Times Cooking unsurprisingly as well. How does that play in? Like, what does it mean to be a product-oriented engineer in a team that's sort of so specific like that?
Yeah, as someone, I'm a New Yorker, as someone who absolutely does not cook. I use my oven for storage. I can
Mm-hmm.
say thank goodness that it's not absolutely essential. And
Mm-hmm.
the thing that's fun is there are as many types of cooks as there are people.
Mm.
So I think what's fun about working on our products is that everyone has something valuable to add, whether they're at home grinding their own spices and throwing these deeply intricate dinner parties,
Mm-hmm.
or they're brand new to the kitchen and just want to pull something together quickly and reliably for themselves on a casual weeknight. So having people from multiple places on that spectrum is so valuable, and it keeps us grounded and from going too far in any one direction.
Mm. Mm. Yeah, that's such a fantastic perspective. Thank you for that. I lived in New York City for like 4 months, and we had a hot plate in our apartment. That was the extent of. We never cooked while we were there, and that really like brought me back to that moment of like, oh yeah, I know so many New Yorkers who are just like, cook. What is that?
For
But
why?
but that point on, like, we'll call it diversity of teams, right? And like
Yeah.
we're talking about diversity on the cooking spectrum, but it applies across so many things that we all do, right? Like if everyone on the team was uh you know I'll follow your analogy. Well, it's not really an analogy, but like grinding their own spices, right? Like I only use this particular flour, like whatever it might be. um you would end up with a product that was tailored to this one specific, and I guess as a New York based institution, being aligned with the New York Cooker is probably a good way to start, right? And not every, like this isn't accessible. Like I love articles about these kind of like one pot weekday meals, like you don't have a ton of time, you don't have a ton of whatever, you got a million things going on, but you're not going to go out because that actually takes time also. Here's how you can get something on the table. I have kids, like feed the family, whatever that is, without a huge production. Okay, and now it's Thanksgiving and your whole plan is to spend the day in the kitchen. Like here's a different perspective, right? And I do think it actually is really important. And I think that anyone listening to this can take that and apply it to whatever it is their team does. I mean, honestly, like
Yeah.
a lot of them are probably in software. As a software team, we struggle with the same thing because we have a very specific perspective of how we build and deliver software. And in the early days of CircleCI, that was an advantage, right? We are software engineers. We're building for software engineers. Like we don't even have to think about what they need. And then we reached a scale where the diversity of our audience was broad enough, and saying, no, you're doing software wrong was not a good answer, right? And they were like, cool, we won't use your product because it doesn't support the way that we do software. And so it took some transition for us to really start to broaden our perspective and think about, I'll say like I use my oven for storage through to, I cook every night because that's what brings me joy in life, like the craft, if you will. I was thinking of Etsy actually, as I was saying that the whole code is craft, like the engineering culture that, right? So very, very different organizations, all customers, and thinking about, yeah, exactly. Like needing to have, well, it's a little awkward because if everyone on our team thought about software differently, we would struggle to deliver software, right? So we have to talk to a lot of people in the community, really get different perspectives and try to bring that in so that we can think about serving all of our customers really well.
Yeah, I
That
mean, I
was a
think
great
that's
perspective.
what's so fun about product engineering. We're thinking about all
Mhm.
these different types of users, and we need different types of people to think through those different use cases. And the problems never stop being available to be solved.
Right.
We're talking about people who think about cooking in different ways, but individual people also think about cooking very different ways from season to
Mhm.
season. You know,
Mhm.
you might be thinking about cooking for your kids when they're home. And then if you have a busy point at work and, life is different, you're thinking about cooking differently. If you are traveling, you're thinking about cooking differently. If it's the holidays, you're thinking about cooking differently.
Mhm.
There's so many
Mhm.
different versions
Mhm.
of of engaging with a product, whether it's cooking or whether it's software development, that it's just there's never a dearth of problems to think about.
Oh, it's so fascinating. I mean, I'm gonna keep moving with this analogy, but like,
Mhm.
we build quick experiments in software,
Yeah.
and then we build things that have to scale to millions of users. And I'm constantly talking to my folks about thinking about those things differently, right? Like, I know you value the craft of engineering and software delivery, but right now we're trying to make the simplest possible thing because we're not even sure if anyone's going to care,
Yeah.
right? And as you were describing the cooking, not that I use a cooking app for this, but my lunch is often like, what piece of lunch meat and cheese can I stuff in my mouth while I'm on a meeting, sort of thing. And then I mentioned Thanksgiving earlier, but like big holidays, the day is about cooking, right? Like
Yeah.
my family gets together and we spend the day in the kitchen. And I like when someone says cooking, I like that version of me. But the much more common version of me is like stuffing the slice of cheese in my mouth as I go between meetings, sort of thing. And so, yeah, it's highly variable even for an individual. So it's a really great point. So let's go back a little bit into
Mhm.
you mentioned the exceeding expectations of tooling. Folks are experimenting, but it's not everyone must use this. You're looking for spots also to accelerate in between. Is there anything that you found at the moment that is really sort of changing the way your team is viewing software delivery today in terms of you know tooling shifts, adjustments in approach?
We're doing a lot of evaluation right now,
Hmm.
and I you mentioned this in this conversation, and I also saw you post about it a few weeks ago, that your opinions about AI today might be entirely different than your opinions on them in a month or 2 months.
Yeah, absolutely.
So very much speaking from where we are right now, we've been doing some tooling evaluation, and as models are evolving in tandem, looking at
Mm,
different tools and using different models, the different things that are evolving can lead, different configurations are more beneficial for certain tasks and different configurations are more beneficial for different tasks.
mhm,
So again, I can't say broadly X thing is like absolutely crushing it
yeah,
from my perspective,
mhm,
but that's where I'm really looking for engineers to, and anyone in our cross-functional organization to experiment with the different configurations for their tasks, the things that they care about, to say what they think it's going to do before they do it, and then to compare
mhm,
to what actually happened. So they have that actual opinion on X
yeah,
configuration for X thing. Um, so yeah, that's how I'm thinking about it right now.
yeah.
And no, nothing that I can say is, unfortunately, sorry everyone, I can't say this tool and this model will change the way you work. Wouldn't it be
Well,
nice if I could?
probably they all will. The question is how many of them are like. I really like that exceeding expectations bar, or it was notable, right?
Yeah,
And I do think, um, it, yeah, it's changing so quickly,
so fast.
and I think that's like I come back to this a lot that and actually I can't think of the post off the top of my head, but I remember reading an article and I think it's a post somewhere that I could find about using uncertainty as a driver in design. And
Hmm.
it was about software architecture, really. Like if if you're not sure which of these two paths we're going to choose, that doesn't mean we have to stop and talk about which path. We have to design for the fact that we might switch paths. And um and I think it's true in this tooling space as well. Like maybe the best thing to do is not to become the absolute expert in some brand new tool that you're really excited about today, but to experience all of them,
Hmm.
use the ones that are helping you now, but know next week something else might be faster, different, give me a better experience, and be really comfortable with that sort of fluidity in tooling. Like I think engineering productivity historically, maybe this is a little too bold or broad, but I'll say
Try it out.
many of the best engineers that I know are really, really good with the tools that they have honed over the years, right? And I think that's some of the resistance that we see is like, but I use this tool and I'm so fast with it, right? And you watch them and you're like, yes, you are. You're absolutely fast with that, right? And so then when it's like, now I need you to use, or now I'm going to try X tool, and like I wasn't a VS Code user, but this is a fork of VS Code, right? So therefore, I don't like now I'm fumbling with just basics, and so yes, I'm getting some advantage, but I'm also like really slow at other things, and that's frustrating.
Mm.
And I will say that as this is going to be really embarrassing, but like someone who spent most of their career programming in Vim, IDEs with amazing Vim bindings are just feel more natural to me, right? But they might not be the ones that have the best sort of interaction with other tools. And so I do think like if nothing else, broadening our scope of the tools that we're comfortable with so that we can take advantage, as we see these things change is maybe part of the exercise right now.
Yeah, one of the sound bites I keep coming back to is that I I believe that AI is a force multiplier for what is in your organization
Hmm.
and in your personal workflows.
Yeah.
And what's nice about the Times is we have this long history of navigating transition. And so it's
Hmm.
baked into our culture that we are really thoughtful about transition, but decisive about it.
Yeah.
And I wasn't at the Times through the earliest digital shifts, but I was watching them nearby as I was in the trenches of a very similar journey while at Condé Nast. I was leading the
Mm-hmm.
tech team for Glamour magazine when they shuttered their print production to go digital only. Fun fact, my name is actually in the masthead of the very last printed Glamour magazine, which is cool. Um,
That is cool.
yeah.
Oh my goodness.
So I saw firsthand the tension of trying to honor a legacy while embracing a future no one could
Yeah.
fully map out yet. Like no one was
Yeah.
sure what was going to happen. And the Times has approached the challenge of evolution with a really clear through line. The mission stays constant and the medium evolves. How we accomplish that evolves. So, you mentioned it, there was the move from print first to mobile first at a time when there was no playbook for news on a phone.
Mm.
then the
Hmm.
leap into subscriptions, when the prevailing wisdom was that no one would pay for digital journalism. And
Hmm.
these moments required conviction, resilience, and a willingness to bet on the long term value of quality reporting.
Yeah.
And, today the Times continues to navigate the transition by honoring its posture both as a newsroom and as a product company. So today that means bundling journalism with experiences like cooking, like games, like Wirecutter, The Athletic. So there we're
Hmm.
not just a paper of record, but an essential subscription that meets people's daily needs. And the larger lesson, one I've carried from Condé Nast to the Times, is that media organizations that thrive are the ones that aren't afraid of technology and certainly don't view technology as a threat, but as an amplifier. So every transition from print to web, from web to mobile, and now into AI has been about finding ways to keep the journalism central while reimagining how it reaches, engages, and serves people. And for engineers, that's what they're thinking about. And they're also thinking about what's important to them. How can they use AI to achieve their personal mission of being high quality engineers, of writing high quality code? So again, we come back to how great it is to work at an organization with
Yeah.
such a clear mission and such a rich history, frankly.
Yeah. I love that because what I'm hearing in all of that, again, kind of going to this point of like there's a spread, we might choose this, we might choose that, we want to be productive and do our best work. Like I kind of expect larger organizations to be more rigid,
Mm.
and the willingness and kind of to embrace a few different ideas or test a few different ideas, and then like in order to find the thing that's going to work, is not what I project onto larger organizations. And I mean, I think that's part of what creates the resilience, right? Through these transitions is we don't know the answer. We know who we want to be. We know
Mm-hmm.
what matters to us through our mission. And we know how to therefore like the lens through which we will look at these things, but let's go look at a bunch of them and give everyone the opportunity to sort of have some ideas, do some interpretation, learn, and then feed back to us. And then we'll make a decision about how we're going to move. I think that you know, there's a lot of discussion at the moment about, how everything is moving so fast, therefore super long hours. The only way we win is if we make decisions yesterday, sort of thing. But there's something like New York Times clearly in this for the long term, right? Like we're taking advice, some of us, from organizations that have been around for 6 months, right? And I think it's, the New York Times in a reasonable position to say, like, look, we've been through this a few times, right? A lot has changed. Actually, you could probably tell, I'm not gonna put you on the spot. Actually, I'm not gonna ask trivia about the New York Times, but like, we'll just say it's been a long time, right? And I was gonna start naming transitions and then try to guess whether the New York Times went through them or not. It's not gonna be worth it, but it's been a really long time, right? And there's something about, again, seeing that reflected over and over. We stuck to our mission. We knew the world was changing. We found a way. We didn't panic, right? We didn't race to do the thing that everyone was doing, but instead we made, to your point, decisions with conviction, and they played out. And we're going to keep doing that. Awesome. Well, I'm sad to say I got to start wrapping it up. I'm going to transition to our little final segment. And we had a chance to talk about this a little bit in London at LDX3, but maybe you'll have time for a slightly longer response. So, talk a lot about engineering on the show. We love, I guess engineers have their own mission at the core, right? Curiosity and interest in exploring the world and changing things. So, when did you first know that you were an engineer?
Oh, that's such a good question. I I think my path has been different than many stories I hear, in that some people experience some of these qualities of engineers and they find themselves, taking apart computers at a very early age, or, following that curiosity into software. And software was a decision that I made. So my career didn't start in tech. My degree is in elementary education. I really loved working with kids, but I
Mm-hmm.
also felt really boxed in by the public school system. The
Mm-hmm.
impact I could make felt pretty limited. So I knew teaching wasn't the long term path for me, but at the time I had absolutely no idea what was next. So I ended up managing a retail store kind of as a stopgap.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where this light bulb went off for me, this aha moment that everything I'd studied in education, human development, growth, engagement, aspects of neuroscience, turned out to be exactly what mattered in leading a team.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And in retail, you see real results from high functioning teams. When your team's happy and growing and engaged, it shows up in real sales numbers. So our store ended up being one of the top performers in the country, and our employee retention was way above average, which is not
Mm-hmm.
easy to do in retail.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I got absolutely hooked on this idea of creating happy teams that can do really hard things.
Mm-hmm.
So I decided at that point I wanted to be a leader of teams and didn't want to be in retail forever. So I looked around to see what I could realistically do without going
Mm-hmm.
back for another full degree. And coding was one of the things I could teach myself.
Mm-hmm.
So I buckled down, taught myself to code. And luckily, it was at a time when being self taught was still very hireable. I don't know if it would be as straightforward today. So, very grateful for the timing and luck that I had on my side. But from there, I spent several years as a hands on engineer before making the transition into leadership, which had been the goal all along. So I've been building and
Right.
leading technical teams ever since. So it was through this path that I applied all of these qualities that I have, this curiosity, like a willingness to like commit to figuring things out and to doing hard things, all
Mm-hmm.
qualities of great software engineers that I discovered through this process.
That's amazing. Um, I also, I mean, I rode my BMX to drop newspapers off in people's mailboxes, so we know that I was around at a time when self-taught was the norm, right? I did not study computer science either. I taught myself after I got out of college. Um, I I like to think it hasn't changed that much. I would say
Mhm.
there's a much higher availability, supply, I guess, as we would say in economics, of college educated computer scientists.
Yeah.
Um, but I don't think that's the necessarily the measure of success, right? I mean, as just defined by your story. And I would urge other leaders to look for the things that are going to make folks successful as opposed to, what college they went to. And I will say this as a parent who's currently panicking about where their children are and will go to college. But like in the end, I know that's one of the pieces of the puzzle. That is an opportunity to get some things, but there's a million other things you can do. And I always say, like, as someone who I did go through an engineering program, it was engineering physics, and we had a very small number of electives. And now that I am in the position I'm in, I wish I had spent them all on things like psychology and teaching and human dynamics and stuff. And instead, I just studied random stuff, whatever I thought I could get an easy grade in, honestly. And so having that background, right? And then saying, okay, I have to get from here to here, manager of this to manager of this, but to be there, I need the skills, right? It's like I'm drawing this kind of dip with my hands. People are probably not watching this on video, but to say, okay, cool, like I just have to develop all the skills that those folks have so that I can, be knowledgeable enough to help them through their problems, whatever the factors are that would bring you there is
Mhm.
like, it's such a long game. Like, it's a really impressive story. It's like, it was a really long way of saying it's a really impressive story to commit to, like, I'm going to go learn this skill so that I can lead the people that use that skill. But it isn't really my goal to do that all the time. Really, what I want to do is make great teams that do that. And I think so many engineering managers end up there because they started out as a software engineer and they're like, oh, maybe I like this management thing, right? As
Mhm.
opposed to real, I'm going to say conviction because you've said it a couple times. That's the thing that I'm going to be great at. I'm going to follow this path because that's how I'm going to get there. That's a super cool story. Thank you.
Yeah, it's been a really really great ride. I love coaching and working with engineering leaders now.
Mhm.
But when anyone comes to me and says, I'm an IC and I'm looking to transition into management, do you have any advice? I'm like, I'm not your girl. I'm available for so many other questions, but that one I will not be great at.
Yeah,
Leverage the
that's
rest of your powerful network for that one.
yeah, yeah. Well, that's very. There's an important lesson in there. Many important lessons in there. But saying I don't know, right? Like there's a lot in that, knowing where your strengths are and what you can help
Mm,
folks with, and then saying, I'm probably not the best person for that one.
mhm.
Awesome, awesome. Well, thank you so much, Meg. This has been delightful. I whatever. I've joked about the games, but it's because I play them. I read the Times. I read the Athletic. Actually, the Athletic I was thinking about when you mentioned it in passing is another great example of, I can get the scores really easily, right? But someone who's gone to the effort to put together something really thoughtful about what's happening in the game, that's really valuable to me. And so I think I'm hopeful. Let's say that I'm hopeful that there's this long future ahead for that deep human connection that we get out of that kind of storytelling, really, in the end, right? Like, humans are about stories, and the New York Times and its properties are a great source of storytelling. So thank you so much. You're also a great storyteller, just because maybe that's influence that you get from working there. I'm not totally sure.
100%.
Love it. All right. So, and thanks all listeners. If there's someone you want us to talk to, someone you want us to, or something you want us to talk about, probably find me on LinkedIn. That'd be the easy way. Of course, if you enjoy the podcast, subscribe on your podcast provider of choice. Click like and subscribe, or whatever it is you do on the platform you're listening to this on. Appreciate all of you. And Meg, thanks again. This was amazing.
Thank you so much, Rob.